Hey, it's Erica from bookendswriting.ca. In the first video in this series, we talked about how to start a writing habit. And in this second video, John is going to walk you through how to maintain your momentum once you've started.
John here from bookendswriting.ca. In this mini lesson, I'm going to show you a really great strategy for maintaining your writing habit. So the mindset shift that we're asking you to think about here is one from content to form. So briefly speaking, content is what makes up a piece of writing. So the stories or the anecdotes or the information that's being conveyed in a particular piece of writing is what we generally mean by the content. The form, on the other hand, is the structure, the organization, the way the writing is put together according to a set of conventions. So a book is a form. There are many different forms of poetry. Plays, letters, toasts are all different kinds of forms of writing and of communication. So what we're setting out here for you and our strategy for maintaining writing habit is built around this idea of form. So we have a PDF document for you that we want you to download, and it's a set of forms, and the challenge is that every day you will write one of these forms, and then you see, as with the calendar resource, the Writing Habit Calendar, this resource asks you to track your progress, to mark things off in order to help form your writing habit. So we have 5 forms for you, and I'm just going to very briefly talk through them. So the first form that we want you to look at is the haiku. The haiku is a very basic form. 5-7-5 is the syllable count. So the first line must have 5 syllables, the second line 7, and the third line 5. So in this example from the famous poet Basho, the floating flower is a 5-syllable line. And then the second line, I saw drift back to the branch, 7-syllable line. And the final line was a butterfly. The other things that a haiku must have is a nature image. So in this poem by Basho, that would be the butterfly or the floating flower. And the haiku must also allude to some season. So it doesn't name the season, but it allows the reader to imagine the season based on the language of the poem. So Basho's poem may be a summer haiku or perhaps a fall haiku. Here's an example of a haiku from me. Dragonfly patters, aurora borealis, marble garden pond. Now, this one has the same syllable count as the 5-7-5 pattern. It alludes to some season. Some people read this as a summer haiku. Some people read it as a winter haiku at times. And it has a nature image in it, okay, the dragonfly and the garden pond. The second form that we're asking you to think about here is the limerick. Now, the limerick is another very common form that many people will be familiar with. Here is an example of a limerick that Erica wrote for this lesson especially. There once was a writer named John, whose stories kept me up till dawn. Beware the allure of his words so pure, an escape you can surely count on. Okay, so this is the second form that we're asking you to try to write. The limerick. Okay, so you see the basic pattern here for the rhyme. I'm sure that it will be familiar to so many people that they may not even need to have the instructions to do it. The third form that we're asking you to think about and to give a shot is the 60-word story. So any story that is super short, 60 words or less. This challenges you to make every word count that goes into the story and to practice brevity. Okay, writing super short stories is, on the one hand, it can be done in a very short period of time, but it can also be very difficult and can sometimes take a lot longer than you may think. So the shorter the story is, the more impact that needs to go into fewer words. One very, very famous story, super short story from Ernest Hemingway you have to mention whenever you talk about the super short story. The fourth kind of form that we're asking you to try in this 5-day form challenge is what we call crossword writing. So essentially you start with one word and then you connect another word out from it as you would in a crossword. So here's an example from Erica, where she's built muse and then the word expressive coming out of muse, and then you can see how her work has continued on. So just another fun form challenge. The fifth form that we're asking you to try is called Magic Erase. So the way that this works, and I will move this guy up just a tiny bit. The way that this works is that you write 5 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs, as many paragraphs as you can in 5 minutes, and then you take out all the content except for the last line of the paragraph, and you see what you come up with. So it's essentially an experiment in text. This is an example from a short story that I wrote, where I simply removed all the rest of the material from the paragraphs for the first 5 paragraphs of the text. In summary, very briefly, we're asking you to think again about form of writing as much as you're going to think about content. This is a great strategy for maintaining a writing habit, for getting your writing habit going, and also for learning more about writing craft and for increasing creativity and innovation in your own work.